And while we're waiting for anyone who is here tuning in, I see we've got a few folks tuned in. If you want to grab a piece of paper and a pen, a journal, a notebook, get your iPhone open in your notes section. The second half of this is going to be interactive. We're going to we're going to make our own little worksheet here, and we're all going to go through this so that by the time you end this workshop, you are walking away from it with an actionable plan to do something. So you're not just going to listen to me ramble on about how important it is to do something. You're going to come up with a plan, and we're all going to do something together.
Awesome. Well, I think we can get started, and then we can catch people up as they come, or just, if people do have questions, they can throw those in the chat. And this will be recorded as well, so it can be accessible throughout the next year after the festival. So
awesome.
I'll take it away if you're ready.
I am ready. All right, friends, let's take it away. Hey everyone, I am so stoked that you're here today. I wish I could be down in Joe's Valley with everyone right now. And for those of you who are also tuning in, I share the FOMO. It looks like it's a beautiful weekend out there, so I hope everyone is having a wonderful time and learning so much. I personally wish that I was there for the beef jerky workshop, even though I'm a vegetarian. The Ungerman's meat is too good to say no to. My name is Katie Boué. I'm the founder of the Outdoor Advocacy Project, which is an organization that really works to educate and empower outdoorists around issues like policy making, leave no trace, stewardship and advocacy. I really believe that we have a responsibility as people who use these public lands and who love these public places to take care of them. The land doesn't have a voice on its own, so it's really up to us to be that voice and to be those caretakers so that these places are around for us, they're around for future generations, so that we have great relationships with the communities we're visiting and, the people whose homes we're coming to and the hometowns that we're, coming through and pitching our tents on. And I think it's really a beautiful thing. There are so many places right now in 2020, especially, where we have this call to action to stand up, to take action, to do something, to have an opinion. And some of those things are really heavy. And I think that when it comes to the outdoors, it's this beautiful, exciting opportunity that we have to do good. Like, there's nothing that feels bad about loving your outdoor places and taking care of them and protecting them. So I'll rewind it a few years and we'll go back to when it all started for me. I started climbing in Florida. Anyone who has interacted with Adriana this week, we are from the same hometown in Miami. And I started climbing in Tallahassee and ended up moving into a van because if anyone has ever been to Florida, there's no climbing to be had there whatsoever. So I moved into a van, started traveling around the country to see what there was on public lands and the climbing that was out there, because I'd never really climbed outside of the Southeast, and ended up in Joe's Valley along the way. And I was supposed to be in Joe's Valley for 10 days. I ended up staying in Joe's Valley for 3 months and just absolutely fell in love with this place. The camping, the access, the desert. I mean, coming from Florida, it was unlike anything I had ever seen before. And it was just such a special experience. I think that's something that we all love about Joe so much, is that it's a really special place. It's a special people, the special donuts. It's unlike anything else on earth. And I think that it's something that really makes this place so special and so worth protecting and so worth becoming an advocate for. So I fell in love with Joe's. I ended up moving to Denver to be closer to Joe's Valley and the desert in Utah, which anyone who has ever done that drive on I-70 to get to Joe's from Denver knows that I was not really moving close to there at all, and ended up actually working with an organization called the Outdoor Industry Association, which is where I learned about policy making and lobbying and advocacy work. And I learned that all these places that I love to go, all these places that I spent a year essentially rent-free living on, needed protection. These were places that had active lawmaking going on around them in DC. There were people making decisions about whether or not I could access this land, whether or not I could camp on this land, whether or not this land would end up being developed. And then I had an opportunity to be part of that decision making and to influence it. And that really just like blew my mind. I had no idea that me, this smelly, dirty girl living in a van, could influence the way that my public lands were taken care of. And that was a really powerful thing. So I ended up moving to Salt Lake City, partially to be closer to Joe's. This time I actually am a lot closer to Joe's. And I founded the Outdoor Advocacy Project and really just started diving full into how outdoorists and climbers can take advantage of the opportunities that we have to protect these places, to advocate for them, and to take care of them. So along the way, I kept coming back to Joe's because this place is just incredible. And I ended up actually getting hired by the Emory County Tourism Board on a contract to help them develop the sustainable social media plan to help promote recreation here. So, Joe's Valley really is the place that started it all for me in advocacy, and it feels like it's really coming full circle. And now I truly get to give back to this place that I love so much in a meaningful way. And that trajectory isn't something unique or special. It's something that we all have access to. It's something that we all can do and can fall in love with and become voices for these places. Um, and really, all of this happened for me by asking myself one question, which is, am I giving back as much as I'm taking from the outdoors? And I want you to ask yourself that question too and kind of reflect on it. You know, we take so much every time we go outside, every time we walk on a trail on our way to the boulders, every time we set up camp, every time we go outside, we are leaving an impact. And it's not the same type of impact. We think of people impacting the land and we think of like oil and gas rigs and development and bulldozers. And if we're really honest, we also fall in that bucket. We are using the land for our benefit. We take so much. These places give us so much. Think about how great you feel after a weekend of getting outside to Joe's, turning off your phone, turning off your email, restoring your mental health. It makes you feel so much better. It makes you feel so alive. It makes you stronger. And so you are taking from public lands in that way. And so the question is, how can we give back? Because the earth, as we are learning, is not always so quick of a renewable energy. It's finite. We can't just take and take and take and take from Joe's. We have to give back too. And again, I think that that's something that's really exciting. That's not a heavy burden. I don't think it's, one of the many depressing things we have going on in the world today. It's a beautiful opportunity that we have, and it's a duty that we have to give back. And so what does it mean to be an advocate? I keep telling you, advocacy, you can be an advocate, be a voice for these places, do something positive, protect them, give back to them. What does that mean? Honestly, you're probably already doing it in many ways. So advocacy reaches every level of your interaction with the outdoors. For this workshop, we'll focus on Joe's. I'll kind of touch on some broader ideas as well, but since we're all thinking of Joe's right now and we all clearly care about Joe so much because we're part of this festival, I wanted to focus it on Joe's Valley. So some examples of advocacy that you probably already do for Joe's. Speaking highly about Joe's to your friends and family. Think about it. You are already an advocate. You love this place. I'm sure that given the opportunity, you could spray all day about how much you love Joe's Valley. That's advocacy. You are advocating for this place as somewhere that people should go. It's an amazing place and you want to share it. Making sure that you spend money at local businesses. And this is something I've done a few podcasts on. There's a Women on the Road podcast episode called Give and Take. And if this is something that kind of catches your ear right now, I encourage you to listen to that episode. And it's this idea that voting and advocacy aren't just these like one-stop ideas, and like you don't just vote with a ballot, you vote with your dollar as well, and you can be an advocate with your dollar as well. So every time that you treat yourself to a latte at Cup of Joe's, that's advocacy in my book. You're supporting local businesses, you're supporting the local recreation economy, you're using your dollars to make an impact. And I think that that is so cool. Other ways that this kind of relates when it comes to local businesses is like things like sharing on your Instagram story. When next time you go get a cup of Joe's, tag them on Instagram. That's a form of advocacy that you may not have even thought counts as advocacy, but it absolutely does. You are helping to promote this place. You're helping to promote this local economy, this rural economy. And in Utah, especially, um, it's so important to be supporting our rural economies. It's a really unique thing we have here and across the country are these small towns, especially ones that are transitioning from other economies. In Joe's, we look at the oil and gas industry, and that's historically always been there. And now, as the economy is changing and as our kind of fuel demands are changing and shifting towards renewables, we need to make sure that we're supporting these local economies through that transition. We need to be making sure that we're supporting these family and the people that live here. And so every time you buy a cup of coffee, you're being an advocate. Other examples are, easy things that I've incorporated into every time I go outside, which is like picking up around your campsite. If you're someone who sees a wrapper on the trail and you just kind of automatically grab it and stick it in your pocket, that is an action that is taking you one more step towards being a powerful advocate for Joe's Valley, and a caretaker and a steward of Joe's Valley. Things like encouraging your friends to stay on the trail, pointing out erosion and helping your friends and your fellow climbers understand like what erosion even is, why it's a problem, being mindful of your pets. There are so many things that we do that set an example and can cause a ripple effect too. So that's the first level, right? And I think most of us here are probably on that level. You're nodding your head as I'm saying these things like, oh yeah, I do that. Oh yeah, that's great. I can get a latte and count that as advocacy. Count me in. But once we hit that level, we can take it to the next, which is really digging in as an advocate. So things like, do you know what land management agencies your climbs are on? I wonder. I'd love to hear if anyone here knows the land management agencies that your climbs are on, because in Joe's Valley especially, it's a mix. We have some interagency relationships going on. Boulders on BLM land, we have national forest land, there's some private land scattered in there. And all those land management agencies work in different ways and are funded in different ways. And the more that we can educate ourselves on how those processes work, what the opportunities are to make your voice heard with these different land management agencies, who's in charge, that's a really powerful thing that we can do, is learn who the people are who are making the decisions about our public lands, about Joe's Valley. And looking at what are the unique issues to this area. So the big one for me, and it's one of my favorite pieces of legislation that I've ever had the privilege of working on, is the Emery County bill. It was a landmark piece of legislation that was many, many years in the making. And it affects Emery County, it affects Joe's Valley. It, I believe, was one of the largest conservation bills in history. And we have an opportunity to be part of that decision making. So I can speak from personal experience because I was involved with lobbying on this legislation for multiple years, and through it actually ended up forging a really great relationship with the Congressman John Curtis, who is the head guy in charge here. And so through building a relationship, I do lobbying events, so I have meetings with his office. I get to meet directly with the congressman and speak to him about this bill, about my concerns, about what I want to see in it. We got really, really cool historical language about climbing added into this bill, which was a really big deal. And the reason that that language was added into this bill is because climbers showed up. And climbers realized that our relationship with the land doesn't just stop when we pack up our crash pads and leave. It stays with us every single day. And even when we're not actively climbing in those boulder fields, we have an opportunity to be partaking and participating in their care and in their future. Especially as we look at Joe's and the growth that's going on there and all the changes and, you know, the development of this place as it grows in popularity, as new climbs are developed. It's really important for us to be part of the process behind all of these decisions. You know, suits in DC are not the only people who are affecting what happens to these lands. We have an opportunity as climbers, as the direct users of this place, as folks who are really driving the economy in this place, to impact and influence the development and what happens in the future. So, and of course, voting. I would be remiss not to mention voting here, because voting is the single most important thing we can do as advocates. And as we start this worksheet, if you haven't already registered to vote, I'm going to make you add that as your number one step on your action plan. And we'll have a PDF of this worksheet for anyone who is following along on the recording. We'll get that sent out to you, but I will walk you through this worksheet right now, and we will leave this workshop with a plan. It's something that I think you can put into action today, especially if you're out in Joe's Valley right now. So let's get started. I'm actually going to do a big version of it. Oh, yes, it is mirrored correctly. I'm going to do a big version of this worksheet and go along with you so that we can fill it out together and come up with a plan. So what this worksheet is going to do is take you through kind of a discovery of like who you are as an advocate, what you have to bring to the table, what it is that you really care about most, and then how we can put it into action. So some small things we can do, and then one big thing that we want to commit ourselves to, and the steps that it's going to take to get it done. So get out your piece of paper, get out your iPhone notes, get out your watercolor set, whatever it is, get it ready. And at the top, let's just call this our Outdoor Advocate Action Plan. And for the next minute or so, I want you to brainstorm about yourself. So who are you? I'm gonna put on here my name, Katie. I'm a climber. I live in Utah. I love food. I am super into social media. I love camping, the desert. Just kind of brainstorm here for a moment. I'll give you some prompts. What are your favorite activities? What do you love to do outside? Where are your favorite places? And I highly encourage you to add Joe's to this. If there are other places that really speak to you too, go ahead and brainstorm for that. Whatever comes to mind right now, like who are you as an outdoorist? Who are you as a climber? Just spit it all out. And if you want to doodle too, that's cool. I'll draw a little dog because my dog is a big part of my outdoorist identity. I think that looks a little bit more like a sheep, but we're gonna roll with it. So get that brainstorming down. And now in the next section, either below it or I'm doing mine side by side, think about what skills you have. So look at your job, your hobbies, things that you may not think to connect the dots of as a climber in ways you can give back. I know that, you know, a lot of the time we think of giving back to the land and we think of doing a cleanup day or giving our money to an organization. But I want you to start pulling yourself a little bit outside of that box of your preconceived notion on what advocacy action is. So are you a graphic designer? Are you a really great baker? Do you love doing things with your hand? Um, are you good with tools? Are you an accountant? I think this is my favorite example. Folks don't really think about accountants, but I'll tell you what, every single outdoor organization, every single outdoor advocacy effort really could use some backup when it comes to numbers and finances. Um, are you a graphic designer? Are you an artist? Are you a sculptor? What skills do you have to bring to the table? So let's brainstorm on that for a second. I am really good at social media, for better or worse. I'm good at community organizing. Pretty decent at graphic design. I love cooking. All right. So we'll wrap this up and kind of keep going here. You know, what your skills are, what your job is, what you wish your job was. You know, not just things that you are currently doing and skills that you're currently using, but what are some skills that you wish you had? What is something that you want to spend more time working on and developing? Even if it's a craft, brainstorm it, write it down. And so now I want you to take a moment to reflect on this. What do you have here? What do you have written down? If I look at mine, I can see that clearly I'm really into climbing. I'm really into Utah. Food is on both sides. Social media is on both sides. Okay, that's something to work with. And now we're gonna start thinking about some actions we can take. And the first thing that I want you to do is what I call everyday acts of positive protest. Again, I don't think that advocacy is always something that's like this heavy, really serious thing. There are so many opportunities for us to, you know, positively protest, as I call it, every single day. So things like bringing reusable straws. You know, every time you bring your crag snacks, you use a stasher bag or you use a reused Talenti ice cream container. I know all of us do that with those Talenti ice cream containers, and you save them because they're great to reuse. You're keeping things out of the landfill. So think about those things. What are things that you can do and that you can commit to? What's something that you're maybe already doing or want to do and want to commit to, take to the next level? Let's see, I already take my straw. I already use my reusable mug, although it's a little more complicated in these COVID days. But what about leaving more Yelp reviews? That's what I'm gonna start doing. So every time I go out to a new local business, when I'm visiting Emery County, I'm gonna commit to leaving a Yelp review for these places, okay? Awesome. So now I have one thing that I'm committed to, and it's a small thing. This first thing that we're doing is not, it doesn't have to be a huge, huge action. Again, our advocacy is on every single level of our engagement and our interaction with the outdoors or with a recreation community. So yours can be, again, using reusables. Yours can be a commitment to picking up one piece of trash every time you go outside. Commit to taking a reusable bag with you every time you go camping, and decide that you're going to not leave your campsite until you fill it up every time. And it's these small things that really add up. And if we think about it in terms of, you know, when you look at sustainability and the idea of reusables and kind of changing our lifestyle on a personal level, we hear a lot of pushback about this idea that, you know, it's really 100 companies on Earth are the ones who are producing 70% of emissions. So it's like Should we be the ones taking on this personal burden? Is that really going to make a difference? And my challenge to that is that I'm less concerned about the quantity of straws that I save by using this glass straw every time that I have an iced coffee, which is very often. What I'm more concerned with and more interested in is the way that this straw causes a ripple effect in my personal decision making and my lifestyle. So it's not about saving the 50 reusable straws a year or whatever it is that I would be putting in a landfill otherwise. It's about the fact that this straw is now changing the way that I look at all disposables. It's changing the way that I look at all my decisions that I make when I'm eating out. It's changing the way that I look at plastic in the grocery store. So it's not always so much about the quantitative impact that these small decisions we make can have. It's about the way that it changes your perspective and that it drives you and inspires you to keep taking things to the next level. When you pick up your trash at a campsite, is it going to solve the issue of overuse and of litter on all our public lands? No, it's not. It's going to make that one campsite pretty nice, and that's great. It's the ripple effect that's meaningful. So the next time someone comes to that campsite, they're going to roll up to a beautiful, clean place that is clearly taken care of, that is stewarded, and that is clearly loved. And you're going to have been leading by example. So now the next camper that comes to that site is far less likely to leave their trash because they're coming into an environment that is cared for, and it sets this precedent that they should care for it too. And now, as you travel around, having put time and energy and hauling out someone's like toilet paper bloom in your own car, in your own trash, you're gonna have this weight of how big a problem trash is on our public lands. And you're gonna start thinking about it every time you get outside. And so it creates this ripple, and it kind of keeps spreading and spreading until you become like me and your entire career in life is dedicated to this. Sorry, not sorry in advance for the monsters I may create here, but I think it's a really powerful thing that we have. And to see how these small changes that we make can affect our lives in bigger and bigger ways. So if you have your small act of protest on there, maybe you have one, maybe you have two, maybe you have three. There's no limit to the amount you can do. If you're not already committed to using reusables, add that. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be this big, complicated thing. You can get a really nice, expensive, reusable coffee thermos if you want, or you can go thrift a mason jar for $1 and just always use this. Think about how you can make your choices and these actions accessible to you. We all operate on such different levels. We can't all give money philanthropically. That's fine. That's not accessible to all of us. But we all have different things that we can do on our level, in our lifestyle, within our means that can create these echoes, that can create these ripples. So you've come up with one small action, you're committed to it, you're feeling good, this feels attainable, you can definitely do this, I believe in you. But now it's time to take the next step and make an actionable commitment to the thing that inspires you the most here. So the way it looks on my worksheet is we have a column here for the goal, and then next to it I do a little arrow, and then we're gonna write out what it's going to take to achieve that goal. And I'll walk you through this. It's not as intimidating as it sounds, but when we make these plans, I think it's pretty easy sometimes to say like, oh yeah, I want to get involved. Oh yeah, I should definitely do this. But what we're going to do here is come up with the actual plan and the steps that it's going to take to get there. Because when you write this down, when you commit to a plan, when you put it in writing, you are actually statistically way more likely to do it. So whether it's on your phone right now, on a scrap of paper, if you need to get a Sharpie and write it on someone's arm, whatever you got to do, write it down so that you stay committed and you follow through. So let's think about some goals we could have here, some big goals. And you're going to revisit that first section we did where you looked at who you are, what you care about, and what you're good at. And so I want you to get creative. I'll offer some ideas here, make it your own, kind of mold it your own. If we've got space in this chat box here, I don't know if I have access to like Q&A here, but I'd love to see your thoughts. Oh, I do see some stuff here. Let me see if I can move this around. So add your thoughts in here as we're going for this goal. So an example for me is, so, okay, I know I'm really good at social media. What's something that I could commit to use my skills in social media to help Joe's Valley, for example? And if you choose something other than Joe's Valley, if you want to get local in your community, that's great too. We'll take your advocacy on any level. So I know my goal here, I want to use social media to support the place that I love, Joe's Valley. Okay, how can I do that? And I'm going to use an example that I've already followed through on because it's easier for me to kind of take you through the steps. So my goal is to use my skills on social media to help Emory County and Joe's Valley develop their tourism plan. All right, I'm going to write this down and you can go with yours. Yours can be, you want to use your graphic design skills to support the Joe's Valley Festival next year. You want to use your photography skills to help create, inclusive imagery for the local climbers association, for your local conservation group. You are an accountant and you want to use your time to volunteer to support a local organization that needs some accounting help. So let's spitball this, kind of go through your ideas. If you want to add them in the chat, if you have questions, let's go, ask me. If you're watching this on a pre-recording, feel free to reach out on Instagram. My handle is my name, Katie Boué, and I'm always happy to help you run through this and brainstorm and spitball and figure out what you can do. So for me, it's use social to help Emory County tourism. All right, great goal. Clear, direct, it has what I'm gonna do, social media, it has a target, Joe's Valley and the tourism in Emory County. But what does that mean? How am I going to do that? So for me, the first step would be figure out who you need to be in contact with. Okay. And that may be probably the first step for most of you, is figuring out who you need to connect with, what resources you need to figure out to get activated and to get tuned into the appropriate place. So if you are, again, that accountant and you want to volunteer your time to help a local organization, it's figuring out, okay, what is that organization and who do I need to talk to get involved? If you want to donate your graphic design skills, if you want to donate your photography, it's about finding out who needs that resource and who is the contact who can get you looped in and get you activated and tell you what the needs are for this organization, for this event, for whatever it is. So if you want to, help out with photography next year for Joe's Valley Festival, if you want to help them with their social media strategy, if you want to help do organize a cleanup in your local community, figure out who you need to talk to. So that's step one. So once we figure out who we need to talk to, we need to come up with a game plan. So figure out how much you have to give, specifically what you have to give. So using social media to help Emory County tourism. Okay, I have a pretty full schedule, but let's say I could donate 5 hours a week. All right. Or maybe you want to do something like organize a cleanup. So you have the capacity to organize one cleanup. And what does that mean? Break it down. So I want to organize a cleanup, which means that I'm going to need to figure out how to come up with a flyer for this. I need to figure out how to get the supplies for a cleanup. Maybe you're an artist and you want to donate your art to an organization. So first step is, okay, who do I contact at Joe's Valley Festival to donate some art? Okay. Then you figure out, how much do I have to give? Do you have a set amount of hours you can give? Do you have just one painting you can give? Do you have an ongoing commitment that you can make? So if you're an accountant, can you offer 10 hours a month, 5 hours a month to an organization that needs support? Figure it out, quantify it, and make it something that's realistic as well. I think one of the biggest barriers we can get into is getting in our own way and getting really excited about getting involved and kind of overcommitting ourselves. Like, let's be real, y'all. 2020 is a very weird year. We have a lot on our plates, a lot going on personally, mental health. Like, it's a rough time. So don't say you're going to commit 40 hours a week or 40 hours a month to an organization if you really only have 5. Give what you can. Don't overburden yourself. Don't overcommit yourself. So let's keep it kind of easy. Let's keep it cool. I'm putting here 5 hours a week. I have 5 hours a week to donate my time. Okay. And so what, for me, using social media to help boost Emory County tourism. Okay. So what does that really mean? Let's break it down. Make a commitment. So I want to create posts, join strategy meetings, I want to learn more about the land managers. I want to figure out, who I need to be in contact with here. So come up with a game plan. If you are someone who is wanting to volunteer your graphic design skills, okay, let's come up with a plan here. So first, you are going to figure out who to contact. You have figured out what you have to give, and now let's figure out how you're going to give it. So if you want to do a piece of art, let's brainstorm here. What type of art do you want to do? What is the purpose of this art? How are you going to share it? Start sketching it out, even if you have space on your thing. If you're someone who loves to cook, I have food and cooking on here on mine, and something that I've been doing is just sharing my food with people, which feels really good to me. And you could do a bake sale in your local community that all the proceeds go back to supporting the local climbing community. You could do a bake sale for the Salt Lake Climbers Association. And that is a way that you can connect your passions and what you have to give to this cause that you want to give to. And I think a lot of folks don't connect the dots between the fact that, like, your killer peach plum muffins can contribute to protecting public lands and keeping Joe's Valley open, accessible, and sustainable. But it's true. So get creative, get your plan down, figure out the steps that you need to take here. Set your goal and outline what you need to do it. And if anyone has questions in here, throw them in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. If you're watching a recording, again, please reach out to me. I always love walking people through this worksheet. And so now you've kind of got a plan. Let's take a step back and review this. You've explored your identity as an advocate. You figured out who you are, what it is that you care about, and what you have to bring to the table. And I invite you to go back and revisit this as often as you need, as often as possible, to kind of check back in with yourself and figure out new ways you can give back, how you can get creative, how you can connect the dots in your life. I think we've been learning a lot about this idea of intersectional advocacy and figuring out how we can make our lives more intersectional. And I think that this outdoor advocacy is a great example of that. Your love for food, and serving your community and feeding people can totally intersect with your love for the outdoors and your desire to care for them. Your love for public lands and these rocks and this like specific place and landscape also intersects with a local community in Emery County around Orangeville and Castledale that also needs support. It's all part of this big ecosystem, and this ecosystem is the healthiest and most successful when we are feeding all the very many parts of it. So yes, we're getting outside and we're cleaning up trash, but yes, we are also taking care of the community and supporting the local community and helping it grow. So we figured out who we are, what we have to bring to the table. We started off easy with a softball commitment to an action that is, not a huge deal. It's something that you can do every day. It's something you can do every time you go outside, and that will slowly start to create a habit and create a mindset and make advocacy part of your lifestyle. And then we're coming down and we're coming up with a big goal, something lofty, something that will create real tangible change. And that is a big action for you. You are committing something, you're putting something on the line, you're giving not just a moment of your time, but a chunk of your time, a chunk of your energy. You're using your skills to give back. And then we're coming up with a plan for it. And now that you have these steps that you need to follow in order to follow through with your plan, I want you to go through these and create a deadline. When do you want to do these things by? What is your commitment? Do you want to do this by the end of the year? Is this something voting related and you need to do it by November 2nd? What deadline can you put here? Give yourself a few weeks, give yourself a month, figure out a realistic timeline that you can commit to and write it down. So I'm writing mine down. And again, I am cheating a little bit because this is part of my actual job, but I'm putting December 2020 here. So by the end of the year, I'm going to have supported Emery County by helping them develop a strategic plan for their social media. I know who I need to talk to. I know how much of my time it's going to take up. I know the steps that I need to take to do it. And now I have committed to a timeline so that I can hold myself accountable and continue checking in to make sure that I'm doing it. And now the final piece of this worksheet, and it's my favorite piece of this worksheet, is one way to support someone else's goal. So typically when I do this workshop, we are all in a big group, or we're all on a Zoom where we're looking at each other, and we can kind of go around the room and share what it is that we have come up with for our goal and our plan, even some of our small goals, big goals, either one, and look at the ways that we can support each other. So in the past, I've done this at the first time I did this was at a creative entrepreneur retreat in Leavenworth, Washington. And so we had artists and makers and woodworkers and writers all together. And we came up with ideas like one organization or one business decided that they were going to donate 10% of their sales for the next month to a specific organization. Okay. So we have someone else in this group who wants to volunteer their graphic design work. Okay. I'm starting to see a plan here. So the person who is doing the graphic design work said, hey, why don't I help you doing your fundraiser sale by creating a graphic to help promote the sale? Or maybe it's something as simple as committing to buying one of those prints that's going to give a proceed to an organization. There are so many ways that we can support each other, and I think that one of, again, those beautiful opportunities and what makes it so special in outdoor advocacy is that, like, it's fun to support each other. We uplift each other, and it's that idea of like a rising tide lifts all ships. So the more that you are supporting someone else's advocacy, the more stoked you're going to be on it. You are affirming them that what they're doing is good work, so they're going to continue doing that work. And it's just going to keep spreading, and it feels good. Protecting public lands, doing good, feels good. And let that be a thing. Like, it isn't all just about the fact that like you need to protect these places and it's so important and we have to give back. Like, we do it because it feels good too. It makes me feel good to protect the place that I love. It makes me feel good to pick up trash at a campsite because then I get to have cleaner places to camp. And that's okay. It doesn't all have to be just this selfless giving back. We need to understand that when we give back, we are also receiving. And that is so, so cool. So you have your plan, you have a deadline, you've committed to it, you're brainstorming ways that you can support others in their advocacy. You can start, following people who are doing great work here, supporting their work. Things like leaving comments on posts about things that are giving back, like boost the algorithm, or commit that you're going to spend $50 on local makers who are giving back to conservation. Whatever it is, figure out a way that you can tap in and support someone else's advocacy work. And you'll see that that investment in someone else will pay off tenfold as it comes back to you and just creates this ripple. And we keep doing more and more, and we keep protecting our lands. And eventually it's 50 years later and we still have these beautiful, incredible public lands that are protected for future generations. And we get to go back and say, in my day, in Joe's Valley, I picked up trash every time I went outside, and now look at how clean it is. Roll with it, ride it. This is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And advocacy is so powerful and it's so important. And if you're still struggling for something to commit to, or you want something else to commit to, if you haven't registered to vote, my friends, just add that to the top of your list. Number one thing that you need to do before you bake any muffins, before you volunteer your time, get registered to vote. Voting is the single most important thing you can do, especially this year. And understanding that voting isn't just about the presidential election. Obviously, that's a huge one, especially this year. But understand that when you cast your ballot, you are electing people from the DC level right down to your local neighborhood level who are affecting places that you love, and places that you care about, and places that you love to play. And so looking at things like, I actually just moved. I am only 2 streets over from Rep. John Curtis's district. And for many Utahns, they have an opportunity to cast a ballot for the representative who is in charge of this place and who is representing Joe's Valley in Congress, and who is supposed to be the person to advocate for Joe's Valley. We're the ones who choose those people. So get to know your ballot, get to know who's on it from the level of Congress people right down to your city council. And know that, you probably don't live in Joe's Valley, you may not be a resident of Emory County, but there are places in your backyard that are, the Joes of your neighborhood. And they may not be a world-class bouldering destination, but it's places where you might walk your dog every day. It's like the really special park that you go to whenever you need to just like take a breath and get some space. Those places need your advocacy too. And it's so powerful when we start this advocacy around a place that we feel so passionately about, but you will see that your advocacy for Joe's will translate into wanting to be an advocate for all the land around you and the land where you spend your most time. And I think when we get into advocacy, we really start thinking about these like big, beautiful, grand places, faraway places where we love to go and travel and play. But we end up seeing that it's all around us. This back here is Mount Olympus, and I have learned so much in the last few years about the advocacy that I can be doing for my local public lands. And it all started for me because I went to Joe's Valley and I fell in love. So if anyone has questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat for me. If you are tuning in late, we will have a PDF available for you with this worksheet. And I'm just super stoked. Please reach out to me anytime if you want to talk shop about outdoor advocacy. You can find me on Instagram at Katie Boué, and you can find the Outdoor Advocacy Project at Outdoor Advocacy. Thanks everyone for your time, and of course, thanks to the wonderful folks at Joe's Valley Festival for a great event.
Katie, we have about 6 minutes, and I have a good amount of questions that have come through online. Do you mind if I
Oh,
ask?
awesome.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So I feel like this one's a little heavy, but with everything happening in the world, and I feel like your voice is so positive online, how do you stay so positive and upbeat and encouraging during this time for everyone?
Wow. Okay. Full disclosure and full honesty, it's really hard. And I think that maybe the first thing we can do is be gracious with ourselves about the fact that this is a heavy and hard time. I've been trying to be more transparent about it. I'm actually going through a really hard mental health year, extremely depressed. I cry a lot, y'all. And like, that's okay. That's normal. It's a really heavy time. It's just focusing on the hope and the opportunity that we have. So like if you need to go give a cry about the state of the world, go do that. Let it out, sisters and brothers, like just let it on out. And then remember that you have an opportunity to change this. We really truly do. Our voices matter. They have an impact. They count. And for as heavy as what's going on around us is, there's still a light at the end of the tunnel because we have an opportunity to create change and to create and facilitate and be part of the way we wish things were instead.
That's awesome. I think this is maybe a little bit of a follow-up question, but what do you do to just stay mentally healthy and kind of take a break when, you know, burnout is there, because it is a very real thing?
Yeah, it is a very real thing. And I think, you know, this is maybe more specific to the work that I do in social media, but creating boundaries around the really heavy stuff. You know, we have to keep ourselves accountable. And I think staying aware of things is such an important part of, um, you know, carrying this burden that we all share. And especially those of us who are extremely privileged and should be taking on as much as we can. Um, but also create boundaries there. You don't need to be plugged in all the time. You don't need to be paying attention to the news all the time. And I would argue that it's actually less productive because when we spend the entire day doom scrolling, we're using all that time and energy that we could have spent doing something positive and like taking action on the issues we care about. And instead, we're like curled up on the floor in the basement crying because we've been looking at Twitter too much. So create those boundaries. So I have a no phone in the bedroom rule. My phone is never in my bedroom, and I sleep with it on the other side of the house so that I'm just disconnected from it. I start every morning by heading outside. This is my backyard and gardens behind me. And so every morning I start by like touching the earth and just finding ways to reconnect with what it is that keeps me joyous and keeps me happy, and prioritizing that and understanding that taking care of yourself is part of your advocacy work. If you are empty, you have nothing left to give, you can't show up to the good fight. So you have to take care of yourself too and fill your cup up.
We have a couple more, and I'll keep firing through them. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. What's been one of the most shocking things that you've just discovered as being an advocate for the outdoors?
One of the most shocking things I've discovered through this outdoor advocacy work is how accessible our lawmakers are and how influential our voices are. So I used to show up to these meetings and kind of these like tables with decision makers and folks who are in charge of things and Congress people and think that like, hey guys, I'm just this, you know, now I'm in my 30s, but I'm just like late 20s. I'm just here. I don't know. Okay. Kind of intimidated by the room. And folks, most of the time, the people in power are a lot closer to your level than you think. I think that we put politicians, especially, on a big pedestal, and they're just everyday people like we are. Oftentimes, yes, you can be more educated on an issue than your congressperson is. Like, I think we feel so intimidated and we realize that like these are just people who got elected or had a lot of funding to get them to where they are, and they are often not this like ethereal figure that is so far above you and that is so disconnected from you. And they really do want to hear from you too. That's something that I've really learned a lot on, especially Rep. John Curtis, who is the guy in charge of Joe's Valley and Emory County, is a really approachable guy. I just had a meeting with him last week, a few days ago, and we were talking about like our favorite types of socks. We were talking about how much the outdoors has impacted us. He was getting really spiritual about King's Peak and how it changed his life. And so realizing that like we're a lot closer to each other than we think.
That's powerful to me. Thank you. Okay, we have two more, and I know we're getting close on time.
Yeah, this isn't going to cut us off, right? We can go over.
We're good.
Okay, great.
So how do we educate constructively? Sometimes it's hard to simply educate and be taken seriously.
This is such a great question. Whoever asked it, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak on it now. We have to get on each other's level. When we're trying to educate people and we're up here and we're talking down to them because they're like down here, because we think that they're kind of like not as advanced as we are, they don't know as much as we are. Nobody wants to be condescended or patronized to. And we have to understand that like you may now know a ton about leave no trace and you know exactly why it is not okay to step on cryptobiotic soil. But I invite you to rewind back to the first time that you came to the desert and you were that person. You didn't know about it. And remember how that felt. And the fact that when we are kind of confronted sometimes with maybe wrongdoing that we've done or something that we're uneducated on, it's really easy to get defensive. That's just like the natural state of being. It doesn't necessarily mean that someone is a jerk or is being a bad person, but it's kind of like, whoa, I was doing something wrong. Shoot. And it doesn't feel good. So when we can get on someone's level, and I like to use the phrase call in, we want to call people in. Like we want this to be something that people want to be part of. So saying like, not cool, dude, stepping on the cryptobiotic soil, not exactly a feel good for anyone involved. Like that's a situation where you're not really intending to provide education and help someone grow. Your intention is to make yourself established as the person who knows what's up. And that's not productive. Like that doesn't help anybody. But if we come into the situation and say like, hey man, I love your crash pad, cool design. This is such a hard problem, right? I just wanted to talk to you about, do you know what cryptobiotic soil is? And they're probably like, I'm sorry, crypto who? And you have this opportunity to start a conversation, like get on their level, make it approachable, make yourself as vulnerable as you're about to ask them to be. And be open to questions and just lead with empathy. Understand that we all, I like to lead with benefit of the doubt that most people probably have good intentions and are trying to do good and trying to show up and just need an example or a conversation or a call in to help them be part of the goodness.
That's very positive. Wonderful. All right, last question, and then we'll let you go. Appreciate your time today. Just what are some resources that you found helpful, just maybe in the beginning of your career and now?
Totally. So part of why I founded the Outdoor Advocacy Project is largely because a lot of this information is hard to find, or it's just like inaccessible. So all the answers to these questions, things like how do I affect policy, like how do I talk to my lawmaker, or even how do I poop outside in the desert? The answers are all there. They're just spread out across the internet. They're on like nonprofit sites from 1992 that are on like Angel Fire websites and like really hard to read. They're buried in blogs. And so why I started Outdoor Advocacy Project is to try and make all this information accessible, easy to read, fun to read, and all in one place. If you're looking for career specific information, I would highly recommend getting tuned into this woman, Olivia. She runs a business called Women in Outdoor Work. And whether you are a woman or not, it is such a helpful resource. She has so many insights on how to get jobs, how to volunteer, how to develop your professional career as an outdoorist. And she really does it all through the lens of this idea that like if you work in the outdoor space, you are and should be an advocate. So I highly recommend checking her out. And then just getting tuned in on a local level to organizations. So if you love Joe's Valley, make sure that you're following Joe's Valley on Instagram. Make sure that you are following the Swell Utah's website and all their social media, and just get looped in. Sign up for email newsletters. just figure out points of contact that you can make in the places that you care about and locally to kind of just start getting this information fed to you, because it's a process. Like no one decides to become an outdoor advocate and like we get a badge and now we know everything there is to know. It's a lifelong learning engagement. So pick a place to tune in and just keep digging in every day.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll just kind of repeat what you said. This will be available for the next year. So just a wonderful tool and resource to get out there. And thank you so much for walking us through it all. It's been wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Catherine. I had a great time.
All right. Bye. Thank you.